We start, of course, with the breaking news that everyone is talking about. A grand jury in Manhattan has, in fact, indicted the former President Donald Trump, an historic indictment, as former President Trump becomes the first current or former president to ever face criminal charges.
We don't know what those exact charges are just yet. They are still sealed. NBC's Alice Barr has more on today's historic news.
Good evening. 3 sources are confirming to NBC News that a grand jury in New York has indicted former President Trump. At this point, the indictment is still under seal. Important to remember that grand juries operate in secret by design. So until that document is unsealed, we don't know exactly what he has been charged with. What we do know is that the charge or charges all stem from a hush money investigation that Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has been leading, and this all relates to adult film star Stormy Daniels, that she was paid hush money during the 2016 presidential campaign. Daniels claims she had an affair with Mr. Trump a decade earlier in 2006, though he has repeatedly denied that claim. 2 sources also telling NBC News the former president's attorneys have been notified of his indictment. At this point, it is not clear when he would actually turn himself in and exactly what that process would look like. Whether we're going to see a mugshot, the steps that are going to take place once he has a chance to surrender to authorities in New York. Mr. Trump's former attorney and fixer, Michael Cohen, testified about the hush money scheme to the grand jury. And he said in a statement today, quote, "I do take solace in validating the adage that no one is above the law, not even a former president." And this will be the first ever criminal case against a former president. Mr. Trump, of course, has repeatedly called this politically motivated. He has slammed this entire investigation from the start. He's also called Michael Cohen, who's really at the heart of this prosecution here. He has called him a liar. And we have to remember this all comes in the context that former President Trump has announced he is running for president again in 2024. Polls show that he is the Republican frontrunner, and certainly this is going to loom large as we head into that election season. Back to you.
We'll have much more on this developing story coming up in less than 30 minutes on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt, including more on the indictment, the legal case, and what all this means for the 2024 presidential race.
A neighborhood in Arapahoe County, the scene of a murder this morning. The Sheriff's Department calling it a case of domestic violence.
It happened in the 5200 block of South Geneva Way. That's in the area of East Bellevue Avenue and South Dayton Street, south of Cherry Creek Reservoir. 9 News Crime and Justice reporter Matt Jablow has been following this story. And what have you learned on this one, Matt?
Alex, the 911 call came in right around 8 o'clock this morning. A murder in broad daylight at a house in Englewood. Witnesses say they heard people arguing before the shooting happened. According to the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department, when deputies arrived, they found the woman's body on the ground in front of a garage. Investigators say the suspect, 45-year-old David Lechner, drove away from the scene, but deputies found him and arrested him about a mile away.
This is an isolated domestic violence incident. There were a lot of witnesses that saw what happened, and our deputies are in the process of interviewing all the witnesses who are here. And I can tell you that there have been no previous calls to this home.
After he was arrested, Lechner was taken to the hospital for injuries that he suffered while fighting with the victim, according to the Sheriff's Department. He's now been booked into the Arapahoe County Jail on suspicion of first-degree murder. The name of the victim has not yet been released. Alex and Tom.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a lot of people seeing that as it was described there.
Deeply disturbing, Tom. I can only imagine.
All right, Matt, thank you.
Heavy winds and warm weather today have created major concern over the potential for fires in our state. We've already seen multiple small ones pop up. The largest is in Park County, burning southwest of Florissant and south of Lake George. As of 4:30, Park County said the fire had grown to about 70 acres. The county is warning people to evacuate the area within 1 mile of County Road 403 and Alpine Meadow Lane. Parts of Teller County around Wilson Lakes, Forest Glen Sports, La Montana Mesa and La Brisas are under a pre-evacuation warning at this point. The Lake George Community Center is open as an emergency evacuation center if anyone needs it. There's also a small fire in El Paso County. Just in the last few minutes, we learned the town of Simla is evacuating. Colorado Springs Fire says they're sending 3 engines and a battalion chief to that place to assist with wildland fire there. They say it is a relatively unpopulated area, but it does have the potential to move fast. We'll have much more on the red flag warnings and those windy conditions coming up in Kathy's full forecast.
This week's school shooting in Nashville hit all of us pretty hard, but it hit especially close to home for one Denver woman. Heather is a mental health clinician that works with teenagers. She tells 9 News she grew up at the church the Covenant School is attached to and says she was at the groundbreaking for the campus when the school was added to the grounds, and that she also knew the head of the school, Catherine Kuntz. Kuntz, one of those who was killed this week in the shooting. When Heather last saw her, she was a tutor, helping to change a program for kids that needed extra help.
I just remember her being like someone that all students felt like they could go to, specifically for academic things, like never shamed kids for not being at the right level or like feeling like they are where they should be in their grade. She was super sweet and super lovely and just a joy to be around.
Heather says while her heart aches for her hometown, she's frustrated about the lack of action, hoping that political leaders will begin to take this problem more seriously and do come up with some solutions. And a Canyon City family is also grieving their connection to the Nashville shooting. Their niece is 9-year-old Hallie Scruggs, one of those 3 children who were killed. The Arnold family moved to Colorado nearly 2 years ago to open the Little Canyon Inn. The family posted on the inn's Facebook page saying in part, quote, Hallie Scruggs was a light for the world, and she will be missed so very dearly by all that she touched in this world, especially this little family in Colorado.
Denver police are looking for the public's help tonight in finding persons of interest in a deadly hit-and-run crash. It happened at the intersection of West 10th and Sheridan just after 11 p.m. Monday night. A woman was crossing Sheridan in the crosswalk when she was hit by the driver of this red Audi sedan. The driver didn't stop, and the Audi was later found abandoned about a half-mile away. The woman died of her injuries. Anybody with information on this is asked to call Crime Stoppers.
Lakewood police are saying the officer who was hurt on Monday responding to the alleged mail carrier robbery is now out of the hospital and resting at home. Responding officers confronted 2 suspects. It ended with police shooting and killing one suspect and arresting the other. They say their investigation is still ongoing.
13-year-old Allie Tumblin was born without a right ear. When insurance denied coverage for her bone-anchored hearing aid, she decided to do something about it. Today, Allie's Act was reintroduced in Congress. It's a bipartisan bill that would help kids and adults access hearing devices and surgeries that would allow them to hear. Here's 9 News reporter Courtney Yoon.
Dear Congressman Joe Neguse.
We first met Allie Tumblin more than 3 years ago when she wrote a letter to her representative.
My name is Allie Tumblin, and I am in the 3rd grade.
She's now in the 7th grade and is still fighting for the right to hear.
I was born without my right ear and no ear canal.
Insurance denied coverage for a bone-anchored hearing device that Allie needs to be able to hear properly.
It's cute. She has her little scribbles and...
Allie was in school today, but her mom, Melissa Tumblin, says her daughter's letter to D.C. inspired Allie's Act, a bipartisan bill that was reintroduced on Thursday.
It would cover the cost of the device itself, an upgrade every 5 years.
The proposed law would also ensure that private insurance companies cover the cost of surgery for an implant, post-op care, as well as 1 ENT and audiology appointment per year for children and adults up to age 64.
I've watched family after family fight and be denied for coverage for these hearing devices.
Traditional hearing aids don't help people like Allie. She needs a bone-anchored hearing device that can cost $5,000 to $12,000 each.
A lot of times insurance providers will tell families, well, we're denying you this claim because 1 good ear is good enough.
But it's not good enough, according to Tumblin, especially for young children developing vocabulary and language skills.
You can absolutely be at risk for speech delays. And so that was part of Allie's problem.
Tumblin says at any moment, any of us could suffer hearing loss. And if passed by Congress, Allie's Act would be able to help.
It helps them thrive in their communities. You want to be able to fully be able to participate, and these devices would allow that.
Allie's Act would also cover people who need cochlear implants, another very expensive procedure. Her mom, Melissa, also created the nonprofit Ear Community when Allie was just 6 months old. They help people with congenital oral atresia, microtia, and other forms of hearing loss get hearing devices and support.
Well, you know, these days bipartisan support doesn't happen often, but hopefully Allie's Act is one that brings everybody together to get this done.
Definitely. It seems like it will, hopefully.
All right, Courtney, thanks.
It's been about 90 minutes since the news broke that former President Donald Trump has been indicted. The reaction is rolling in. We're going to talk with 9 News political analyst Kelly Maher about this historic event when we come back.